Hello and welcome to another episode of Alan Writes. This is number probably 18. Anyway, we're writing The Winter of Truth. Let's go. I've got something burning in my head and I gotta get it out. Finara fought the rebels in her own way by coming in early to design the Empire's fighting vehicles. There we go. We have established we're in Star Wars. In the rising light of dawn, it was quiet on the design floor. Alright, so that's all good. I also have some outlining to do because I realized finally how we're going to drag all this into her. I know, yeah, we left it on a cliffhanger, but I'll get back to that. Alright, so, why do they think she's one of the, she's involved with the rebels? The rebels? Because the rebels put a slicer into her luggage, so to speak. It activated when she arrived on planet, temperature setting, and it allowed them to remotely access the observation tower feeds. Basically, it just allowed them to, whatever they were broadcasting, it could pick up. It was all encrypted stuff, but they could perhaps decipher that. And at the very least, they then knew exactly where the towers were, which ones were active, which ones couldn't, and eventually, which ones they couldn't see. Naturally, Finara knew nothing about this. Nor did the Empire. However, the people on Hoth are going to. They did a damage assessment on Hoth from the rebel attack. And that meant that found traces of a slice. The only thing that had changed was the arrival of Finara and the DT troopers. Troopers checked out. So did Lawner. So basically, they then walked back Finara's digital footprint back at Kuat Yards and saw her interaction with the rebel agent. They assume she's involved somehow. They will. It's not exactly torture, but it is basically they will interrogate her, use drugs to get to the truth, which is the truth is she's not an agent. And she'll get an apology. For that. I got another thing, where someone falls matters not at all. Where someone falls matters not at all. It is the when and how. It is the how that this is the Inquisitor talking, that interests me. or the whatever the Imperial intelligence agents. I have to look this stuff up, and we'll get there when we get there. All right. So anyway, that's how they're going to figure it out, and that's the rebel plan is crap, of course. Rebel plan is tenuous, and I know that's not how you spell tenuous, but that's fine. Can't always spell tenuous. He said tenuously. Rebel plan is tenuous. Required them to figure out who was going to Hoth and availability. To luggage, etc. They chose her because it was a good chance that she was going to go for the battle damage assessment, and they were right, but they were also wrong a dozen different times. But they were right this one. Wrong a dozen times, right once, and so they basically used her as a cat's paw. I'm not sure. There's some intelligence service terms for that, like where you use a USB and you drop it. You fill it with whatever malware you're going to do, and you drop it in the parking lot of a place that you want to infiltrate, thinking that somebody from there is going to pick it up and stupidly plug it in back at their the computer inside the secure network. It's a candy drop or something like that. Anyway, it doesn't really work now because people are on key about it, but apparently it could, and it probably did at some point, just because people are kind of stupid when it comes to security matters. They don't like things getting in their way, and so they react silly. All right, so let's go back to the wampa attack. But she's the rebel. She's going to dart it for the speeder's hatch. Blaster shots rang out. A beast roared. The hatch wasn't was still sealed. Was still sealed. The electronics not even in standby. The electronics completely cold. But were completely controlled. But the physical override had to still work. She doubted. Had to still work. She used her shank to pry up the access panel, shearing off the safety bolts. Shearing off the safety bolts. Shearing off the safety bolts in her panic as the battle raged behind her. Then it faded. She glanced back to see the three rebels. A solid crack, something, a solid thump. The blaster fire shifted. Then it faded. And to find the three rebels, Kent staggering and without his rifle, retreating down a passageway. Is that how we spell her name? Is it? Is it now? No, it's not. Finara's hand, she held a flashing, a red flashing grenade, primed to go off. And there, staring at them, was a huge creature, like a vast white and unruly carpet. It's a vast and unruly carpet. Its solitary arm, the other having been cut off, and a black stump in its place. Arm, not the army, having been cut off and a black stump in its place. Grasped toward the rebels, but it snapped futilely toward the rebels. Either it recognized the grenade, or else, something more was at the wampa turned toward her. Its eyes were pits. Pitiless pits. Its eyes were pitiless pits. Its maw dark and red. She wrenched the override and popped the hatch. As the wampa lurched toward her, she scurried inside the speeder's hull. It was, now, does she get the hatch down in time? She would almost certainly have to. But it can't actually fit inside. The hatch came down and came right back up as the beast grasped the edge. Okay. Finara scurried into the back. Scurried in the back and felt its claws snag at her, rend her coat, slicing the thick fabric in an instant as it went. But the thing was just too big. The hatch was made for people, and there was no way it could fit inside. But it tried, though, wrenching the not wrenching, pulling the hatch off, but the passage into the back of the speeder is made for pulling the hatch apart as it went. She got to the engine. She got to the engine and started the warming procedure. Started the warming procedure. There wasn't few people ever did this. The controls up front were much easier, but much easier to use. But she knew it and knew shortcuts. It'd shave hundreds of hours. It'd shave 100 hours off its maintenance cycle. But it wasn't her bike, and she didn't care. And she didn't care. The engine screamed in agony. The engine screamed in agony as raw fuel poured into its cells, throwing off hard yellow flames as the entire thing lurched forward, as the craft lurched forward. And of course, it's the entire craft. The wampa slammed against the wall, pinned against the crumpling brow. While warning lights flared all over. As she reversed thrust and drew the craft back. That was all she could do from the rear. Now she had to risk the cockpit, the open cockpit. The wampa staggered to its feet as she settled in and began a turn, heading for what she assumed was the cavern opening. Heading around for what she assumed. Like as not, the rebels had simply flown in and parked. Opposite way, the wampa leaped onto the back of the craft. Its weight forcing it down to the ice. Finara put the repulsors to maximum, and it just barely got them back off the ground. Then the beast clawed its way forward. Rending metal with every moment. She put the thrusters forward, and completed the turn. Mostly, shaving off ice and snow from the wall as the speeder's frame took another hit. Alright, as the speeder's frame took yet another hit. But the damn creature stayed on top, even as she accelerated out. Maybe the opening would be low enough to ahead lay a dark opening where the fluorescent what do they call it? The not moss, it's lichen. Always lichen. I liken that. Where the fluorescent lichen didn't grow. The opening, the gap to the surface was low, and in an instant, she was out. The icy cold digging into her cheeks through the ruined hatch. A glance back found nothing on the top. Then a claw, then a claw came up. Then the wampa pulled itself back into view. Having ducked behind the speeder's rear. Getting singed, but having avoided a collision with the low opening. Alright, and in an instant she was, and she didn't spare. And she didn't. The gap to the surface was low, and she didn't try to slip out, scraping the top of the hatch clean as she went. In an instant, she was out. Digging into her cheeks. Mangling the top of the hatch further as she went. And having to pull itself in the back, having ducked behind the speeder's rear. Pull itself from behind the speeder. The damn thing must have slipped down to avoid a collision. To avoid the collision. To avoid the collision. And it kept on coming after her. Not good, Finara. For herself. Above an already thick panic that had congealed into that had begun to congeal into terror. Congeal into terror. Not good. Worse. The speeder lurched. The repulsors shorting out. And the wings and the with the maneuver vanes, what do they call that? And the airfoils frosting over as even the exhaust succumbed to the planet. The planet's chill. Fine. Be that way. Fine. It was going to go, then it was going to be useful. It was going to then it was going to be useful. She thrust her the fuel cell from the heater into what would that be? Into the primer. Set the thing for a short delay, and then hit the button. Throttle back to a sane speed. Then thrust the fuel cell into the primer, set the thing for a short delay, and hit the button. She jumped out. The wampa, watching her go incredulously. Standing now atop the slowly settling speeder that then exploded. Saw the wampa watch her go incredulously. The force of the impact threw her into a snowbank. And crystallized in a puff of white crystals. Well, that's where she gets Then she hit the ground. The ground and the concussion hit her afterward. With a bounce, a hard bounce. She lost her breath and felt the leg crack. A rib crack. Then her world turned white as snow exploded around her. Engulfed her. The world spun. The cold kept coming. Some part of her rose up and forced her to waken. Despite the agony, she got to her feet and found burning wreck and no sign of the wampa. That's good, she told herself. Either it's dead or gone. That's bad, because I could have cut it open and used the beast's own flesh to stay warm. Oh well. Next time. She staggered toward the, she looked about. her side burning as she did so. Her side flaring agony as she did so. Broken rib? Probably. At least it wasn't a leg. Not that she had anywhere to go. Back to the rebel base. Back to the rebels. Maybe, if she could find it. She could find it. Their hidden opening that had evaded the army. Evade the army. So long. It invaded the Imperial Army. Something else, maybe? In the bright glow of the burning speeder, she saw another hull nearby. The remains of one. Anyway. Not an AT-AT, but something that had been something else. A once twin to the speeder that Finara. She caught the glimmer of another hull. Its profile. A once twin to the crash to. Who was she again? How do I spell her name? Yeah. Craft. With nothing else to do, she staggered toward it. As the numbing cold dug into her room, dug deep through into her, she staggered toward it. Of another hull nearby. The remains one, not an AT-AT, but something else. Smaller, but hopeful. Alright, and she's going to find a wrecked combat speeder. Yeah, she's going to find a wrecked combat speeder. That's what's going to happen. Not like the transport before, or the modified transport. I'll have to go back and probably modify what the other transport looks like, because it's the other speeder looks like a combat speeder. Yeah. And she'll have to work with that. And I'm going to have to watch now the Empire Strikes Back. Oh no, poor me. To make sure that I get my details right for this. So, anyway, this has been The Winter of Truth, and I hope you've enjoyed this little bit. A lot of action here, a lot of things going on. All this would on screen take a minute or two. But here it's taken us 40 minutes to put together. And this is only a first draft after all. It'll be even more exciting and stunning as we get through. We just have to lay down, we've got the idea, we've got now the basics of how it works, we've engineered that, and then we need to tidy it up and make it appealing. Polish the crumb, so to speak. I hope you've enjoyed this. Stay safe out there. Take care. Thanks.